It's the Infinite Podcast. Go tell your friends. It's the Infinite Podcast. My God, it never ends. It's the Infinite Podcast with Rob and
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Project Infinite Podcast, the podcast covering the infinite and ever-expanding multiverse of fandom for movies, comics, TV shows, video games. We've got you covered. I'm Rob. I'm here, as always, with Court. Took a little holiday break.
Yeah, we did.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
But we're back now, and we're going to talk about Gladiator.
Yep. Haha.
This was probably one of our more anticipated movies of the year.
100%.
From when it was first announced. It's kind of cool, like, you know, we've done so much of this now that, like, we're like chronicling like our journeys for like certain movies, like from when they're concepted and when they're announced to like when we actually get to see them.
Yeah. The best version of that was Oppenheimer, in my opinion, where we had a full realization from top to bottom, and we're going to talk about some more stuff like that in a little bit too. So,
but this is one of those movies too, where like I remember like when, you know, we talked about like when it first started happening, and then, you know, obviously the big news is like when Denzel got added to it, we were like, what is this? Like, what is happening? Little did we know that Denzel was gonna embark on his blockbuster movie arc. Which it seems like he's going into with this, and then obviously with the idea that he could potentially be in Black Panther 3, like he's checking, it feels like he's checking off like bucket list items.
It's funny because, you know, just to touch on that real quick, and his announcement that his retirement is now imminent, and now there's a clock that's now been put and placed upon the world. Unfortunately, you're talking about the retirement of one of, if not the greatest actor that's ever lived. So for somebody like him to, you know, we already talked about it a little bit last week, the idea that Ryan Coogler was able to, you know, allure him and, you know, excite him for a role for a Marvel movie. I mean, you can just toss the Marvel part of that aside. I just think he wants to work with Ryan Coogler, and I think that's a bit of, you know, another actor that similar in age that was going up with him was Angela Bassett as well too. So somebody else that was, you know, that probably told him like, hey, no, this guy is incredible. And I mean, the most poetic thing I think Denzel's doing is he's doing a lot of classic movies, and he's doing a lot of Shakespearean things because that's where he started. He started, Shakespeare was the thing he started on, and to end on that same thing, it's just like poetry, it rhymes.
Yeah, so, and we'll talk about him in Gladiator because I think he's absolutely sensational.
Oh yeah, that's one of his, and it's saying something that is one of his better performances he has put up in his career.
Yeah. But before we have a little bit of news, not a crazy amount, but we do have some, including, obviously, more Christopher Nolan casting. So I love that this is his gimmick now.
He's got us. He's truthfully got us.
This is his gimmick now with his films, is that like every week someone's added to the cast. And in the last 2 weeks since we've been out, we've added 2 more kind of A-list actors. So we've added Charlize Theron and Robert Pattinson, obviously a Christopher Nolan kind of mainstay, I guess.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, you know, obviously this is shaping up to be something.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be outstanding. I mean, you're looking at Tom Holland, Zendaya, Lupita Nyong'o, Anne Hathaway, Robert Pattinson, Charlize Theron. I mean, directors would be chopping at the bits to get 2 of those actors, 1 of those actors, and he's got 6 of them, and now he's going to look to add more on top of that as well too. So, and Matt Damon, excuse me for forgetting one of the main leads of this movie, but how I think this is going to play out, if this is this action type of, you know, this rescue helicopter movie, I guess is the best way to explain it. I mean, you know, you can put players in a movie like that as well too, because I wonder if it's because I believe they said it's from a terrorist attack as well too. So I wonder how far he's going to go into dipping into some of those thoughts and ideas. I think it's going to be, I mean, nonetheless, I don't think I have no choice but to think that might be the best movie of 2026, correct?
Yeah.
This movie's coming out. I have no choice but to believe this could be potentially the best movie of 2026. And again, I'm super happy that Tom Holland is getting to lead this movie too. I mean, with Matt Damon, I mean, one of your most classic actors that you'll find. But then it's just the rounding out of the cast. He does that so incredibly well. Rounds out a cast, and, you know, I love it that he's kind of getting to that point where it's like, Oppenheimer solidified it, that he's at that point where everybody is A-list when they go to work with him. Like, everybody on that main cast will be A-list, and they will stay A-list. So, the Charlize Theron one is the one, I mean, from this channel, everybody knows how much I love Robert Pattinson, but that Charlize Theron one, that's the one I'm actually excited to see. I'm really excited to see what he does with Lupita, Anne Hathaway, and and Charlize. I want to see kind of. I just want to get a concept of this movie. This reminds me of the Tenet thinking of, remember when the first Tenet trailer came out and everybody's like, what the, what is this? I do think this one's going to be a little bit more face front, but I think he's going to flex his action muscles for this one.
Yeah, which, you know, it's been, trying to think, like, his last, like, I guess, like, you know, Dunkirk was probably maybe like the last thing that he's done that had, like, not an action focus, but, you know, kind of, he doesn't, you know, it goes back and forth, like it waffles back and forth. You know what I mean? In terms of,
we
like,
kind of talked about it. It's like either he gets his narrative to do, and then he gets to do like a franchisey thing, and then he kind of switches back. So now this one seems, because it's either he gets a historical thing or like a franchise thing. So now he's swapped back. And I remember after Tenet came out in 2020, and then Oppenheimer got announced, I was like, he's gonna go back to do something that's like original Inception from his mind, I believe. So I do hope that's the case. I hope this is a Christopher Nolan. A piece of me still wants it to be Tenet too, but I know that's not going to happen. But whatever idea that it is, I know he's working with IMAX. They're getting that brand new technology ready to use. I mean, just as somebody that loves film, I can't wait. I don't know what this is going to be, but I anticipate it's going to be something absolutely incredible.
Yeah, exactly, 100%. We gotta talk a little bit about comics news.
Yeah, we do.
So DC launched the Absolute Universe early, not even that long ago, like 2 months ago.
Right.
October is when the Absolute Universe launched. It's a new continuity written in the DC universe, basically surrounding Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman. So they're basically going back to their roots, their core three members of the Justice League, with Absolute Flash, Absolute Green Lantern coming early next year. And it's basically completely revamped stories around these characters.
So I know the thought process is this. It is essentially you take Wonder Woman, Batman, Superman, and whatever other characters, because I'm assuming they're going to keep adding characters into this Absolute line, and you change one core thing about them.
Yep.
So Superman's big change is that instead of Krypton, blowing up, R.I.P., he grew up on Krypton, but he still has the same values. So, I mean, he was taught, Krypton, this advanced society that he got to grow up on this time. That's a cool one. Batman is just a tank. He's 7 feet tall. He's 7 feet tall. The core difference for him is that
he's not rich.
He's not rich. He's just a everyman. His father is a teacher. His father still gets killed, but his father's a teacher, and he dies right in front of him again. So he's essentially this not rich, he had to make everything that he did, but he absolutely owns Gotham. And I love the Alfred piece in there as well, too. That Alfred piece is really cool. Wonder Woman's might be the coolest one, is that she was raised in hell, right?
Instead of Themyscira,
Yep, instead of Themyscira, Wonder Woman was raised in hell, and she is an absolute just beast. I love it.
Yeah. And I mean, the crazy thing about this is the Absolute Batman run is selling extremely well.
Yeah, it is. Yep.
Which is not something that anyone really talks about in comics, is obviously, like, the heyday of comics is kind of past as far as sales, and you'd be lucky if any comic sells more than a couple tens of thousands of comics nowadays. But this Absolute Batman run is selling 400,000 units since its launch, which is kind of crazy.
Right, and I think what happened too is that people were. I know the big controversy when they was announced was the look and the Bat logo, because people are nerds, including us. Everybody's like, "What is this Batman logo, and why does he look like that?" And then they read the comic, they were like, "Wait a minute, is he cool? He's cool.
He is pretty cool." I think it's awesome. That a new kind of universe is getting kind of traction.
Yeah.
I think that's cool. It makes me feel like people have kind of like a hunger for new stories instead of retreading, and I think that's hopefully that's a good precedent to set,
right? So
that not just for comics, but like movies, TV, like it makes people, hopefully it'll make executives kind of realize that, like, hey, maybe people don't just want like nostalgia bait, like maybe they just don't want retreads of old things. Maybe they want familiar characters, but they want new things,
right?
You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think that's cool. So I'm I can't say I'm not intrigued. Like I want to definitely pick it up and see what it's all about too.
Give me a character and give me one thing you would change about them for an absolute line.
Like a DC character?
Ooh, I got a good one. I got one.
Let me think here. I might I would say I would do Robin, but make him be brought up by the Joker instead of Batman.
That's a good one. That's actually really good. That's incredible. That would be a good piece just to slide right into the Batman.
It would just be Dick Grayson.
Right.
But he got discovered by the Joker instead of by Batman.
That's awesome. That's awesome in so many ways. I would want a little bit more of like a it's not a one-shotty thing, but I want a little bit of an idea where it's Darkseid, but he's the High Father instead, and Darkseid's a good guy instead of being this pinnacle of evil. He's the pinnacle of hope for the universe. So everybody kind of looks to him instead of being this, absolutely maniacal evil being.
Yeah, that's cool. That'd be cool. I think that to do like the cosmic stuff would be cool too.
Yeah, that new gaudy era of things, but still have Darkseid just he'd be an absolute good guy. He's just a good guy that just wants to help everybody and restore the universe. But that Joker, that Robin being one of the Jokers would be insane.
Yeah, because like the Joker never really had like a sidekick before. Besides, Harley Quinn's kind of a sidekick.
Right.
I'm just looking at the premises of the Flash and Green Lantern.
The Flash one I'm intrigued for.
Yeah. The Flash one's cool. Like, there's no Speed Force. Like, Wally West just has his powers.
Okay. Oh, and it's Wally West.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Absolute Flash is Wally West. So that's that one. Absolute Green Lantern is a focus on Hal Jordan, Jon Stewart, Guy Gardner, and Joe Mullion after a large Green Lantern falls from the sky and crushes a town, causing widespread paranoia.
Interesting. What are they, cops?
I guess. Yeah.
Interesting.
And then the Martian Manhunter one is focusing on FBI agent John Jones as his body is taken over by an alien consciousness referred to as a Martian, causing him to slowly go insane.
Interesting. That's an interesting one.
So that's going to be more of a psychological take on Martian Manhunter.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah. So yeah, cool stuff. I definitely like that idea. It's kind of similar to like the Marvel like What If stuff, but in a more serialized way.
Right.
Because the Marvel What If stuff is very like one-shotty and it doesn't really mean anything.
Right.
Whereas like this is going to be like an actual like universe.
Well, what I also know is happening in the normal part of the DC, like the DC mainline stuff, is that they're doing some lifting with Superman right now, and then there's a new Justice League title, like the Justice League kind of revamped of like all the heroes on Earth, rebranded into the Justice League. So any hero that's on Earth essentially turns in like they're part of the Justice League automatically. So I think there's going to be a situation where they're going to all cross paths, like the Absolute Universe and the main universe are going to cross.
Yeah.
Maybe they're going to have to take them on. That would be interesting.
Batman fights bigger Batman.
Yeah, Batman fights bigger Batman. I still think the Absolute Superman would take on the main Earth Superman pretty well too.
Yeah, I'm keen on it for sure. The Game Awards. So the Game Awards is coming up next week. Next Thursday, the Game Awards is coming out. And the Game of the Year. The main thing I wanted to hit. Obviously, the nominees are what they are across all categories. It was a really, really, really strong year for gaming, I think, across the board, 2024. But the main thing I really wanted to hit on with this was the Game of the Year nominees, because it sparked some controversy, and I think justified controversy. So the Game of the Year nominees, Astrobot, no surprise.
Maybe the greatest game ever.
It's really good, man. Especially I don't know if you fired up your PlayStation in since yesterday, but they gave an update to the UI that it fires up like the old PlayStation 1, and it gives you like a little 30th anniversary graphic, and then you can set your UI to like PlayStation 1 UI, PlayStation 2 UI, PS3 UI, PS4 UI.
Which one are you picking? Which one do you have the most nostalgia? Can I guess what it is?
Yeah.
It's the PS2.
Yeah, the PS2. It's one of the... It actually just... PS2 just made the news by becoming the biggest selling console of all time, because people are still buying them. So it's over 160 million units, I think.
That's insane.
So it's overtaken the Switch as the highest selling console of all time.
That's insane.
But yeah, Astrobot is just this love letter to PlayStation. It's a super fun platformer. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Black Myth Wukong, nominated for Game of the Year.
And I remember we were talking about this, and I know you had some skepticism at this game, and I had a feeling just watching some of the gameplay. I said, this game is built to be Game of the Year in a year where there's no absolute, like, monster. Because remember last year, that last year was like, everybody on that list had a deserving piece to get that Game of the Year.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's cool that Wukong got nominated. I don't think it's going to win, but I do think there is a game award for, like, Player's Choice Game of the Year. And, I mean, anyone who follows the NBA and is familiar with the NBA All-Star voting, when Jeremy Lin was around, when Yao Ming was around, they would just run away with player vote or fan voting because the outpouring of support for Chinese, any type of Chinese export, whether it's a game, whether it's an athlete, is insane. Black Myth Wukong cleaned up at the Golden Joysticks, which is all fan driven voting.
Right.
So I expect Black Myth will win that. I don't think it's going to win Game of the Year. It could win Action Game of the Year.
Sure.
I think the action in that game is really tight.
Yeah.
So I think that's cool. Balatro got nominated for Game of the Year. I know this raised a lot of eyebrows. I wasn't familiar with Balatro. It's apparently for people who are familiar with the roguelike genre, it's a roguelike poker game. So you
That's interesting.
It's super interesting. You get hands, and as you progress through the game, you get more like perks and upgrades, and it's a roguelite. So there's like boss battles.
A guy named Jim with a visor on.
And then when you lose, like, you go back to the beginning, but you keep some of your perks and stuff. It's the fact that it got nominated for Game of the Year is kind of crazy, but like everyone I've talked to that's played it is like, no, like it actually is really, really good. Metaphor Refantasio, which is a game that I just started a couple days ago. It is a classic high fantasy turn-based JRPG made by the same developers that have made the Persona series. I'm really enjoying it so far. It's very well voice acted. The animation is really great. It's a classic turn-based RPG. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, no surprise. The juggernaut of pretty much of the Game Awards this year got nominated for the most awards. 7, classically, including Game of the Year, RPG of the Year, Performance of the Year. Brianna White, who voices Aerith, got nominated for that. I know Cody Christensen won the Golden Joystick for Performance of the Year, and Brianna won the Supporting Performance of the Year at the Golden Joysticks. So Rebirth obviously is kind of like the front runner here until you get to the 6th nominee, which is Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree, the DLC expansion for Elden Ring, the game that came out in 2022. And this is the one that has garnered the most controversy, in the sense that an expansion DLC has been nominated for Game of the Year. I think it sets a bad precedent.
This landscape it's interesting. It's I don't want to say it's thought provoking, like the idea that an expansion would get any sort of nomination for anything. B, that there's a poker game that's a roguelike that was nominated for Game of the Year. I mean, and we knew it. And it's funny, and we'll talk about this in January where the time rolls around. Movies this year are kind of in the same boat. There's been a lot of incredible movies that came out this year. I mean, a bunch. I don't care what anybody says. I'll argue this to the end of the day. Every year there are so many incredible movies that come out. Every single year. I don't care. If you don't think so, you're not watching the right movies. You just aren't. There are so many movies that are coming out. This year's going to be similar for the Oscars, where there's going to be a lot of toss-up, and there's going to be a lot of head-scratchers. There's going to be a lot of nominations that people don't think make a lot of sense, and it's funny that but 2023 for the movies and 2023 for gaming were 2 pinnacle years in the modern age for gaming and movies, so it's very similar in that aspect.
Yeah, I just think the Elden Ring thing is wild.
Yeah.
I likened it to, you can talk about like a movie or a TV or an album, right? Artist releases an album in like 2020 that wins Album of the Year, and then like 2022 they come out with like the same album, like deluxe edition, right? That has like bonus tracks, and then that would be like if that album got nominated for Album of the Year again. That's kind of what's going on with Shadow of the Erdtree. Right. Being nominated for Game of the Year, it just sets a weird precedent because like now it feels like these companies are gonna get like this motivation to be like, no, we can just kind of release. And Elden Ring is a complete game. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, Shadow of the Erdtree is an expansion. Like, it's essentially like a new map, new things to do, but it's still Elden Ring at the end of the day. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like that's kind of the wild thing about it. And, I think it totally is in line for, I think it's also nominated for RPG of the Year, which is fine. Like, it's an expansion. Like, but for it to be nominated for Game of the Year is just a weird thing because it's not, you can't play Shadow of the Erdtree without Elden Ring. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't stand on its own. And I think it's just a weird thing. And I'd be very interested to see what happens.
Do they just give it to Astrobot and call it a year and just try to regroup for 2025?
I mean, it's possible. The Astrobot thing is interesting because it feels like it's almost like a PlayStation kind of like, not propaganda, but like it's a PlayStation inspired thing. So I don't know if they would give Game of the Year to something that's so closely tied to one company.
Sure.
Even though like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth obviously only launched on PlayStation 5, but it's not really like associated with Sony in that way. Yeah. That like Astrobot is like,
it's directly.
It's a Sony thing. Like when you buy your PS5, you get Astro's Playroom on the system.
Remember when you got that notification? You were like, "Skip, let me play the games that I want."
Nope, I played it. I did play Astro's Playroom, and I really liked it. Because it was
now because I didn't know what it was. I was like, "Get this out of my face! This is a brand new place." And now I'm like, "This is the only thing I've ever wanted."
Astro's Playroom is super fun. So yeah, I'm just keen to see what happens next week. Because I think it's going to say a lot about, how people feel about games going forward. And before we talk about Gladiator, I just want to talk about Superman and Lois.
Yeah.
Really quick. We'll probably talk about the show in full next week, I would imagine.
Yep.
Kind of just do because we only really talked about the first season, like on the podcast.
Right.
So we'll talk about the final season. We'll talk about, we'll talk about the show and Tyler Hoechlin's kind of place in the pantheon of Supermen.
Yeah.
And then maybe we'll I'm forecasting a little bit, but maybe the week after we just do like an Arrowverse CW verse episode.
I'd be down for that.
This is it. Superman and Lois officially ends the network TV DC TV presence. That started, funny enough, with Smallville.
Yeah. What year was that? 2001 or 2003? I think it was 2001, if I'm not mistaken.
I think
started,
you're right, yeah.
Because it lasted until 2010, maybe 2011.
2001, yep.
And then it ended in 2010, 2011.
Yeah.
And then Arrow started in 2011, and then the rest is history.
Yeah. Superman and Lois, just this, from the first episode, just surprise that so much care and attention and just incredible writing, performances, filming, cinematography that you don't get on network TV.
And on top of that too, I think there was a level of, to your point, there was a level of care that goes into it. I think there was also like an unspoken agreement and understanding that, Superman deserves that. And I think the creator said, we're not going to take from what the CW does, because we love the CW. Let's not get that twisted. But we know. That's all I'll say is we know. We understand. Superman and Lois did not do that. They said I think they knew from the start, like, hey, we want to take this vehemently seriously from top to bottom. But it's the same. It's funny enough that I was just having this conversation. I was talking about the holdovers from last year. And it was this ideology that, in movies aren't tender anymore. They're not tender. Superman and Lois is a tender show. That show has so many great lessons in it. It feels classic for some odd reason. There's no better way for me to explain it. There's this classic overlay to it. It's just a really good family drama. And it has a core. When a show has a core and you can play on that core, you can challenge that core, you can question that core, and then you can reaffirm that core. That's how you do that. That's a really good piece to kind of have be your backbone, and they did it so incredibly well.
Yeah, and just a show that I think just understands Superman at the end of the day.
Yes, yep. To the point where comic writers were coming out of the woodwork and saying, no, they get it. Like, these are some of the best Superman stories that we've seen in live action.
Yeah, and just to, being able to seamlessly pick and choose, either famous Superman stories or famous Superman characters. We've talked endlessly about the John Henry Irons reveal in the first season.
Right.
when you're like, wait, they're just doing Steel?
Right.
Like,
Right.
The introduction of Bizarro in season 2.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and how that, you know, I know you're kind of working your way through it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to talk too much about the Bizarro stuff because it bleeds into later seasons. As far as how they morph that into a different story, which was super cool. Down to all the Lex Luthor stuff in the final season with Michael Cudlitz, who put up just an insane amount of transformation throughout the end of season 3 into all of season 4. And I know like people were concerned about, you know, the show, the final season getting reduced number of episodes, reduced number of, you know, reduced budget.
Right.
You know, kind of made people a little nervous about like, are they just going to mail this one in? And no, you know, I think this final season was probably the most intimate of the 4 seasons. And I think kind of maybe in a weird way, like the reduced budget helped that.
Sure,
they kind of like went back, you know, not went back to their roots, but they really honed in on the character aspect of the show and kind of left, you know, there's plenty of Supermaning to be had in the final season, but I feel like they really brought it back to the intimacy of like the family and the performances and the characters. And I think that really boosted it. Sure. I mean, I've seen more people talk about Superman and Lois in this final season than I have in the last, you know, handful of years.
Yeah, I've seen people like, you know, YouTubers, like people with different accounts, they'll go on and they'll be like, just started this CW show. Obviously, we know that this is going to go. And then they watch and they're like, wait a minute. Like, this is actually... And at the end of the day, regardless of budget, if you know how to storytell well and you know how to get me to care or get us to care about character as well, too, that's it. It's not overtly complicated.
Yeah, I think... You know, now this final season is over, when we look back on it, I think, and we'll talk about this next week, obviously, Tyler Hoechlin's kind of place in the pantheon of Superman, and not just Superman, but comic book adaptations.
Yeah.
I think he's worked his way in there, in terms of like that rarefied air of comic book castings. I think he's just done an outstanding job.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about Superman and Lois next week because, boy, there's a lot to talk about. But now we got to talk about Gladiator.
Ha
Denzel. They said he's like, I'm not doing an accent.
Yeah. I'm from the Bronx, Rome.
I saw someone say that this is a prequel to Training Day.
It basically is. That's his ancestor, actually. He did the same thing.
You gonna do this to me, Lucius?
I'll have all y'all Romans playing basketball. I'll have y'all all falling in the Coliseum.
So Gladiator 2, obviously the sequel to the 2000, you know, Best Picture nominee, Gladiator, that starred Russell Crowe, directed by Ridley Scott. One of the greatest action movies of all time. One of the greatest historical dramas of all time. One
of the greatest lead performances of all time.
Yes. So how do you follow that up? You do Gladiator again.
Yeah, you do Gladiator. You do Gladiator 2, but Denzel's in this one this time. And so I can just rip off my initial thoughts because I know, like, reception-wise, this movie, like, I remember the initial punch was like, this is one of the best movies of the year. And then people started rolling in. They were like, we don't know. We don't know if that's true. We don't think that's true.
Yeah,
that was very weird. Like, I remember the initial punch was like, no, this movie is one of the best movies of this year.
Yeah, and then it's... Yeah. The reception's been mixed to good, I think.
Mixed to good as the best way to put it. Yep.
It's got a 71% among critics on Rotten Tomatoes, 83% among audiences.
Which is funny, because if you look at the Gladiator 1 Rotten Tomatoes score, it's I think the audience score is higher, but the critic score is very similar. I'm pretty sure it's...
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, the first one is similar critic score, so you can take that how that is. And I mean, that's a film that went on to win Russell Crowe that Oscar from 2000.
Yeah, so Gladiator, original recipe Gladiator has an 80% among critics.
So it's lower.
It's higher. It's higher.
Oh,
yeah.
sorry.
Critics.
Oh,
yeah.
critics. Okay.
Critics, yeah. Critics is an 80% for Gladiator 1, 71% for Gladiator 2.
71%. Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Which is, like I said, it's like mixed to good.
The only argument I'll always make for that is Interstellar's at a 71% on Rotten Tomatoes, so I will use that until I'm blue in the face.
Yeah, I think critically, I think what a lot of people kind of have a problem with, not have a problem with, but like the kind of what knocks it a little bit is like, it's just Gladiator again.
Sure, it's just Gladiator again.
There's monkeys in this one.
There's monkeys in this one. There's the editing is a little interesting. And guys, Ridley Scott just turned 87 yesterday.
Right.
Cut him a bit of a break. And he wants to make a third one. He just said a couple days ago that a third one is already in the works. So give him a little break.
And I mean, I think what made the first, I mean, like you said, what makes the first one elevated to kind of like that pantheon status in terms of movies is the Russell Crowe performance.
Yeah.
And Paul Mescal is good in this movie, but he doesn't get there as far as like the Russell Crowe stuff.
So I'll think about it this way. Nobody on planet Earth could get to that Russell Crowe part for what he was pulling off in that movie. And that's how I want to start with, because I'm going to get into my opinion. I think that Paul Mescal performance was nothing short of incredible. I know a lot of people, and again, why I think people were iffy on it? It's because he's not Russell Crowe. I think that's the immediate knee-jerk reaction, and it's subconscious. Like, we talk about the way we think. We're basically film psychologists at that point for, like, thinking how, like, why audiences think the way that they think, and, like, masses and, like, nostalgia bait, all those things. Like, he's just not Russell Crowe. So...
And he gets... Russell Crowe didn't have Denzel in his movie,
right.
Casting this enormous acting shadow over him, where obviously Joaquin Phoenix is incredible in the first Gladiator as Commodus, but they're more like 1A 1B, like they bounce off of each other. Whereas like Mescal, to his in his defense, he gets dwarfed by Denzel whenever they're kind of together.
And it's not even Paul's fault.
No.
And I want to get into this too. I thought his performance was nothing less than incredible. In my opinion, I thought he was good. Yeah. I thought he was great. I mean, he had this, the one thing that I said walking out of the theater is that he had this idea in his head is I'm not Russell Crowe as the Gladiator. I'm Paul Mescal as the Gladiator. That was the number one thing that I think he made the correct choice on, is like, I do not need to be, we'll save spoilers for a moment, but I do not need to be the Gladiator. Like, I need to be my Gladiator. I do not need to be his Gladiator. He's a little bit more charismatic than he is. He's a little bit more like,
he's softer.
Yeah, he's a little bit of like a softer, but like there's like a trust that so I thought about this because they're both great leaders, essentially, is what they develop into. Or Russell Crowe needs to rebrand his leadership versus, Paul Mescal's character, which we'll get into his name in a second. He needs to kind of find that in himself. He had it in the opening scene. He was a leader, but he was a different type of leader. So they both needed to kind of rebrand. And again, to your point, this is just Gladiator again, but it's Top Gun 1, not Top Gun 2 again. Like, all these movies they're the same. So I just thought his performance was great. I think, like I said, he's a little bit softer, but there's like a trust that comes with it, in my opinion. Like, he is somebody that like you immediately want to root for because, tragedy befalls him as well too. Again, which is just like Gladiator 1, but
yeah, there's
something that's like endearing about his Gladiator, about like the way that he rises. Physically, he can fight. And if you want to talk about something that will, ruffle all the feathers right now, I have no problem saying this. I think the hand-to-hand combat in this movie isn't even close to, or the other way around. I don't even think the hand-to-hand combat, it is nothing short of incredible. The first one is rugged on purpose, and but this one, like, it kind of balances both, like, the modern action, your John Wicks, but it still has that rugged nature to how fighting should have been done. Like, it is bloody, it's like, it's gruesome, it's tough, but it still has the slightest fine finish to it, which I think is nice.
It's fun, like, I like the kind of really, like, intimate fight sequences, and there's a couple of them. The last one I'm not as crazy about. Sure.
Because you have to ask. The only thing I didn't love about that last one is you had in your head, you probably had to ask some questions about what we'll get to in a second. You're like, in your head, you're like, Paul, the whole movie was him. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
he was fighting anybody and everybody, and now he's struggling a little bit. I said, wait a minute.
Yeah.
For an older man. Like,
yeah,
this
there's
is,
two there's two really good ones.
Oh, there's
two really there's two really intimate, really good ones. There's one that takes place in at a party.
that one was so good. That's a good one.
I really love that one.
Yep.
And then there's one later on involving Paul Mescal and Pedro Pascal.
Oh yeah.
And we got to talk about Pedro Pascal too,
God,
because
yeah.
I think there's a version of this movie where he's the main character.
Sure.
And I think that movie's also really, really good.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, I think all in all, I think this, if we're going to talk about where this ranks in terms of legacy sequels, I think it's not Top Gun Maverick.
No.
It's probably somewhere in around, probably above Force Awakens.
Sure. I can probably, spectrum put it in between those two. Like, if there's a middle point in between those two, I think that's where that fits. Like, this movie, in my opinion, it misses the best picture by just a smidge. And and this is where enjoyment versus reviewing comes into play, because I still have foresight enough to understand that this movie's not perfect, but I personally really enjoyed this movie.
Yeah, I liked
really
it a lot.
enjoyed this movie.
Yeah, I really liked it a lot. And it was just well performed.
Yes.
There's just some things that the CGI gets a little wonky, especially when you get to that first bit with the baboons.
Yeah.
And I'm like, do we need the baboon bit?
Right, because what you could have done is you could have put people against them too. You could have put actual human beings.
more. I think we needed more of that. I think we needed more human
on human,
human on human stuff.
Right.
Cut the monkeys out of it, cut the sharks out of it.
Yeah, and just Court doing the Court's Film Corner. This movie is chopped a bit. It is definitely. I think they talked about Ridley was he just said throw as many cameras up as you can and just pick and choose, which going into an edit, that's a tough thing to add. And especially what you're doing essentially too is you're chopping performances on top of that too. So obviously Denzel can navigate through that. Paul Mescal as the main character of this movie, because you're talking about somebody that's already been nominated for an Oscar before he's 30 years old. He already has an Oscar nomination under his belt. That wasn't somebody that was just plucked off the street. That's an up and comer. Yes, he's still getting his footing, but imagine getting your footing and you have an Oscar nomination under you. That's pretty dang good. And the things that even Denzel said about him, Ridley said about him, no, this guy is great. I still really like that performance. It's just, again, it's this isn't your father's Gladiator is the best way I can say that. This is a little bit of a different type of understanding of it too.
Yeah, and I guess we'll talk about the ending in a second, but the ending doesn't do that character any favors when he has his suit up sequence.
Sure.
And I'm like, okay. It's a little derivative.
Right. I was bought more into the speech he gave, because I think the speech he gave itself was great. The suit up was very this is the risk you run with legacy sequels. This is the risk you run. How do you navigate? And I talked to you about it when we were leaving the theater. I hate when legacy sequels try to play too coy and they try to do it to the point where it's I'm not going to give you anything. No, we know this is the sequel. It's okay. You can give us stuff, but I think it went from it playing itself very coy to giving us everything very abruptly. Everything from Gladiator 1 very abruptly.
Yeah, I think we'll talk about it. Any other performances you kind of want to highlight here?
Other than Pedro Pascal, Connie Nielsen is still great.
She was good.
Yeah, that's still Connie Nielsen at the end of the day as well too. But yeah, that Pedro Pascal performance, and that's just, again, it's you put together an all-star cast of actors to be in this film. So
he's one of the best, and I don't think he gets nearly enough credit for his physical acting.
Oh my God, yeah. Yeah.
It reminds me, seeing him in this reminded me a lot of the stuff he did in Game of Thrones.
Yeah. He has this pomp and circumstance to himself. He has this physical mentality of being I think the best way to describe it is grace. There's a grace that he carries whenever he walks anywhere. It's grace and command, I think. And much like Denzel Washington, it's just in a more tender way, I think is the best way to explain Pedro Pascal.
Yeah, it retroactively bothers me that he's not doing a lot of the physical stuff for The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Because I'm he's really great physical actor.
I think that's more of a protection piece, but that's again that's heightened sense awareness of like real world connotations that you shouldn't have when you're watching a movie.
Yeah. So
let's talk spoilers.
Yeah, let's talk spoilers.
Denzel gets his hand cut off.
That's the first spoiler you want to talk about?
No. But he does. They Star Wars him. He gets his hand cut off.
I mean, the big thing is Lucius, or Hanno is Maximus's son.
Yep, and Marcus Aurelius' grandson. So,
yeah.
Awesome.
And that's the bit, the end bit that I was like, all right, we're kind of, when he goes full Maximus cosplay. I think the sword would have been enough. I don't think he needed the armor and the dress and the sword and the shield.
I'm not as upset with it as you are, I think. I'm
It would have been, it just feels like nobody, nobody, it felt like nobody cared. Cause nobody besides.
Okay. Cause that's a good point that I'll get into. Okay.
Cause who is there
that's a good point.
to watch him walk out in that gear?
Yep.
That would have been cared.
You know what this movie
because both emperors were dead at that point.
You just lit another spark in my head for something. I feel like Russell, if you were gonna do this, the aura of Russell Crowe's Gladiator needed to be much larger. It feels like this film, it doesn't forget. I think it's on purpose, but I feel like it has him almost as just another gladiator that went through the arena, instead of you should have played it as he was the this was the one that people almost upended Rome over, is this gladiator. That would have helped because the whole theme of this movie is the dream. Is the dream possible? Marcus Aurelius' dream. He's not just a crackpot old man. No, he was serious and looking life past, even he knew this dream was possible. This dream is possible. So
yeah.
So that's an interesting thought process to have as well too. But
because Gladiator. Commodus says it to Maximus in Gladiator 1. The general who became a slave, the slave who became a gladiator, the gladiator who defied an emperor, and they just. His aura's gone. That's the bit,
and I'm glad you said that, because now thinking about it, that's a very interesting take. Because now when I think about it, that suit-up scene would have absolutely played if the aura of his father was he is the gladiator that defied the emperor, this, and and again, it should have been played. We still don't know who that is. We never knew who that, but they would know who it is, but nobody else would know who that is. Maybe you also keep alive one of the characters from the original, one of the gladiators from the original movie is there to be no, you look just you look like him. You sound
what was John Von Hansu doing? John Von Hansu couldn't come back for this movie?
Did he not die in the first one? He died in the first one.
Did he?
Yeah, he died in the first one.
I can't remember.
Regardless, the aura of the original Gladiator, of Russell Crowe's Gladiator, could have propelled this movie, because that's essentially what you're banking off of for these legacy sequels. Is you have to take the presence of everything that happened and try to find an innovative way to play it. Mm-hmm. That, now that you said that, that's a great point of he just felt especially the addition of the new Diamond Hansu character for this movie. He was a gladiator. He said no, that gladiator needed to be the gladiator. That is the gladiator that defied an emperor. That suit up scene would have meant more. The reveal, and they should have sprinkled the rumbling, because then once you get to the actual war, the war piece that's going on, that also would have bolstered that a bit. So,
and I think the movie did it, the promotion of this movie did itself a disservice. I really think the movie could have had a big drama piece of, is he Commodus' son or is he Maximus' son?
Sure.
But we knew going into it that he was Maximus' son.
Right. They could have also done, it's funny you talked about Force Awakens. They could have easily done a situation too where it was, they could have done a situation where it was just another man's son. That's it. He's just
Ray?
Just like Ray. That's.
I feel like people would have been mad about that. Yeah, the end. So, all right, we got to talk about Denzel now, for a little bit. Macronus is plot twist. He's the villain.
Yeah,
he's the real villain.
Yeah, we know.
Because I guess before we talk about Denzel, we got to talk about Fred Hetchinger and Joseph Quinn.
Yep.
As the Syphilis brothers.
I'm going to say something. You cut Fred Hetchinger. How do you say his last name?
Hetchinger?
You cut him out of the movie completely and you just have it be Joseph Quinn?
Probably.
I think you can cut him out of the movie. You cut a little bit of movie. You probably give some of that back to funny enough, you give some of that back to Pedro Pascal.
Probably.
And you give it back to the fact that, like, because, all right, so to describe Pedro Pascal's character, his whole thing, it's nobility. Like, you think he's some monster that's, you know, like this new age monster that's perusing through Rome and being this but he's just a good guy. And again, it's like it's the Eric Lenscher thing. Like,
he's tired.
I'm a soldier. Like, but I'm a good man. I just am in service of Rome. But look what the Rome I'm in service of. This isn't the Rome I'm in service of in my head. He
does have a lot of, it's funny, like, that General Cassius has a lot of Maximus.
Yeah, he does.
In him.
Yep.
Which is really interesting.
Yeah.
You know, right down to the point where he is plotting to literally overthrow the emperors.
Right. So I think, and again, I like the other guy that played the other emperor, but Joseph Quinn, like, I think, and again, this keeps making me feel better and better about Joseph Quinn as an actor. Not that I didn't before, but, like, Joseph Quinn is still great. Like, he's still really good. So I think you spin this movie, you cut one of them out, you just have it be him, like this, like, conniving little, like, but again, you needed both of them to show, like, one of them had a little bit more sense. The other one, like, purposely had, like, actual mental health issues. Like, he was not right in the head. And a monkey, yeah. Like, he made one of the monkeys part of the Senate.
All hail Dondas.
But yes, Denzel, I mean, you're talking, this is one of his better and that's saying something. This is one of his better performances. I mean, I think he has a birthright claim to that Best Actor nomination and win. I don't think anybody's gonna take that away from him this year. From what I'm thinking about from all the films that came out this year, nobody's taking that from him. So it's a very different role for Denzel, funnily enough, even though he played Alonzo in Training Day.
He's back to being a conniving, backstabbing villain guy.
Right.
Which is a great role for him. It's not one, obviously, that he dives into a ton.
And it's funny because, like, this is a thought process in, like, writing and, like, casting. Like, people don't understand how much goes into just straight casting. Like, what pulls the bigger precedence, the character or the actor? Like, which one pulls? Because you can't be naive and not understand what actor you have right there. But obviously, in your head as a writer, it's the character. But a lot of writers do say this, where it's like, I think of a person in my head when I'm writing roles. Like, there's a person in my head when I'm writing this role. So
this feels very much like that. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think of, like, if another actor was playing the Macronus role, if it's nearly as compelling, and I just don't think so.
And that's my point, because at the end of the day, I think Denzel, just being presence alone, it did two things. One, it elevated everybody else's performance a little bit. And you're talking Pedro Pascal. Like, this is an award-winning actor. You're talking Paul Mescal. This is an award-nominated actor. You're talking Connie Nielsen. You're talking some absolute heavyweights. And Denzel Washington, just being on set of this movie, immediately has to raise everybody's game a bit. Because that's like if Jack Nicholson were to step on set, if, you know, Leo were to step on set, like if Daniel Day-Lewis were to step on set, everybody immediately is going to be like, I grew up watching this guy. Like, I need to be a little bit better because I grew up watching his films. And then the second point for it is the writing piece for it. It's like, I guarantee you, he was just like, do what you got to do. Like, I'm going to give you the basis for your character, but, like, do what you got to do. Other actors could have played the part, like, this kind of, like, you know, fluid, like, almost, like you said, like, this conniving weasel of a person that, like, would do anything, like, but again, he's
Littlefinger. If you've watched Game of Thrones, he's constantly stabbing people in the back.
He's Littlefinger with more physical, like, dominance and fear to him.
Which I didn't know that he had until you get to the end of the movie.
But again,
wait a second.
That's the Denzel Washington part of him just walking alone causes you a bit of fear, especially as the movie starts to truck along. I made a point when we were walking out of the theater too. One of my favorite things is his performance is like a train, but you know the train's still getting to the station, but it's still as sweet. You still understand, like, we know he's the villain of this movie. Come on, like, you know he's the villain of this.
Because he's the only antagonistic character that's capable of being a villain.
Exactly.
Like, you don't buy either emperor as menacing as Commodus was.
Yep, and you immediately take away any fear that Acacius is any sort of villain.
Yeah, because that's, like, the first act.
Right.
He gets back from Rome and he's like, I'm going to overthrow the emperor. You're like, all right, you're a good guy. Like, you're not a villain.
You know from the look, because you know from the look he gives, and again, that's Pedro Pascal being a great actor. Like, you know from the look, like, he's not happy to be burning these bodies and to be conquering. Like, this isn't what he signed up for.
And then you get to the emperors and you're like, oh, these two are just morons.
Mm-hmm.
there's like you said, there's a little bit to the Geta character, the Joseph Quinn's character, where like he kind of sort of gets it, like he kind of knows what he's doing, and then the other one's a maniac.
Yeah.
So like, and you kind of wonder where that's going to come into play, and it does. Like Denzel, like the thing about Macronus is like when he does the plan, it happens very quickly. like he's like, hey, all right, here we go. It's time. I'm making my move.
And there's definitely a lot of real world implications that Ridley was pulling from as well too. Like the way that like, because there's the scene that we kept joking about walking out of the theater is it's like the line that we're gonna remember from this movie is like, or one of the lines you're gonna remember from this movie is when Denzel's walking and he's just like, we will give her, you know, we're gonna give her a fair shot, because Connie Nielsen's character obviously gets exposed for trying to overthrow the Emperor. So he's like, we're gonna give her a fair shot. Immediately turns around and said, as soon as she gets out there, murder her immediately. And he's just like, why would you do that? He's like, that's gonna upset the people that want her to still be in power because she has the birthright claim. That will give Rome right for the taking, and I will take Rome, and that is politics.
Yeah, it's the. Again, I couldn't not think about Littlefinger when I thought about, especially like his plot, Macronus's plot. It's the Littlefinger speech that he gives at the end of, I think it's season 2. They do the montage and he's speaking and he goes, it's the chaos is a ladder speech that Littlefinger gives, where he says, chaos is in a pit, chaos is a ladder. Many who try to climb it fail and never get to try again. The fall breaks them and some are given a chance to climb. They refuse, they cling to their realm or the gods or love. Illusions, only the ladder is real. The climb is all there is. That's Macronus's point. Like,
right.
If I can just, it's the Joker thing. Like, if I can instill a little bit of chaos, a little bit of disorder, I can just ascend right to the top.
Right.
And that's exactly what happens.
Right.
Because he's the brains of the operation.
Yep.
That's manipulating Lucius. Yep. He's manipulating the emperors.
What I would have played on a little bit more, before we get into our final thoughts, what I would have played on a little bit more is his thought process in his head that he was sent to do this. I wish that was something we would have tugged on a little more, that like that's his his motivation was the only piece. And like you can put 2 and 2 together, but I think that was one thing where it was like, I wanted him to, he should have kept at it. Like, no, the God sent me to, he just has that. It feels like a throwaway line. Like they should have hammered that, like keep at that. Like I was sent to do this. Like I was sent to kill these emperors. I was sent to take Rome for myself. I was sent to Marcus Aurelius' side originally to be his slave. I was sent to do all these things so I can take this for the gods. Yeah.
Cause he feels like, ultimately he feels like he can, and that's why I think he really works really hard to get Acacius out of the picture, because I think he realizes, he even thinks he can manipulate Lucius. He doesn't feel like, I feel like at no point he ever feels like he can manipulate Acacius.
Sure.
And that's why he needs to get him dealt with.
There's a version of this movie where Acacius is like this anti-hero a little bit more. Yeah. He might lean a little, because he's a good guy. There's no other way to shake it. Like he is just a good guy, and maybe that's Pedro Pascal just being like such like a good person and like a person that everybody loves.
Yeah.
But again, it's the same thing. Like there's a version where Paul Mescal kind of gets taken down a bit. You put Pedro Pascal into, they kind of flip a little bit, but you make sure. So it's like, it's the 2 of them against Denzel versus it's like Acacius is like his engine to give him his second act motivation, character speaking. Give me my second act motivation to propel me into the third act. Like, I truthfully now know about the world. Now I can go, like, instead of him being that character, they flip, but you have the 2 of them against Macronus.
Which would have been cool. I think this movie could have done a lot if the Acacius character was a little more prominent, because he's really not in it that much.
No.
He's in it like in the beginning, like he does a lot of standing around and he does a lot of fighting.
Yeah, and that's a testament to Pedro Pascal, because he feels like he's in this movie for longer than he actually is.
He does like the plotting with Lucilla, and then he's arrested, and then he fights Paul Mescal, and then he dies.
Yeah, and that's halfway through the movie.
Yeah, and that fight, I loved that fight between them, because it's the best version of the Batman vs Superman fight, if that makes sense. Yeah. Like these 2 characters are clearly
there's a large misunderstanding.
Yeah, and
one of them is this is a better version, because one of them is hell-bent on it, but they stay hell-bent on it until they finally learn. And it's not some save Martha. It's like an actual like, no, like I'm going to give you everything you need to know right now. Like, I tried to save your life once. Like, you can kill me if you want, but look around you. Like, just take one look.
And then Acacius surrenders.
Yep. And then that was the piece, like, I give up. Like, I'm not gonna fight you. Like, I'm trying to tell you, like, no, like, I want this gone as bad as you do.
And the real
it's that anger piece too, because Denzel keeps at it for Lucius. It's like, it's the anger piece. It's like, what's your motivation? It's anger, and it's like, it is anger, but it's like, what's the controlled anger? It's the dream. Like, we can now there's something we can actually work towards.
Because Lucius never believed in the dream.
No,
he didn't care for it
until Acacius kind of awakens it to. And again, it's supposed to be a broader thought process of like, it wasn't going to be Marcus Aurelius. It wasn't going to be Maximus. It was going to be Lucius. That was the one that was to execute this dream.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, again, like to your Russell Crowe point, like no one, Paul Mescal or not, like no one was ever gonna hit that. Like Russell Crowe hit a special note.
Yeah, I mean, I can argue that to the end of the day. Like, you're talking about one of the greatest, like, lead performances in a film of all time. Like, that is one of the single best performances you will ever find.
Yeah, nothing Lucius gets to is gonna be, my name is Maximus Decimus Meridius, yada, 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 and I'll have my vengeance in this life for the next. Like, no one was ever gonna get there. Like, that is, like, one of the most incredible moments.
Right.
In movies.
But boy, does he tries his best, and I think he succeeds a lot in this movie. Like, I can't overstate how much I think that performance is still really good. And then we get
the ending, which the ending is interesting in the sense that, obviously Denzel's plan doesn't go awry, but like it wasn't as like, I don't know if he thought it out quite as much as he thought he did.
Well, so it's kind of, it's the outside thinking that you shouldn't have when you're watching a movie. It's like the dream itself comes into the movie way too late. The idea of the dream comes way too late because it's like it goes classic good versus evil, because it's the dream of Rome versus like, this is just another emperor that's going to rule Rome and be a bad person. Like, and he overtakes him and he triumphs and he wins the day and there's no big fight. There you go. But like, the dream came so late. And again, if you kept Acacius in this movie all the way through that third act, they were the two that should have fought in that movie. And they were the two that should have fought. Like, it should have been Pedro Pascal versus Denzel instead of Paul Mescal versus Denzel.
Yeah, because the whole thing is Acacius has his army, his loyal army of 5,000 men outside of Rome in another place. They're just waiting for the command from Acacius to come. Acacius dies, and then he gets the ring. He gives Lucius Maximus's ring. That was originally Marcus Aurelius's ring, yada, yada. Take this ring to my army. They'll know you're him, basically.
Right.
And then Denzel has the Emperor's army. The Praetorian Guards and all that, led by Game of Thrones alum Roy McClane, the Hound. And I was like, "Is that the Hound?"
Yep,
and it was.
It was the Hound. He was a unit.
Fuck the king. That's what he said. That's what he did at the end of the movie. So Macrinus leaves after the Colosseum bit goes awry. Lucilla dies. Macrinus, great with a bow.
Yeah, he is. He's pretty good.
Didn't know that.
Get that guy in the Avengers right now.
Didn't know Macrinus had that in him.
Yep.
But he's great with a bow. Also great with a sword.
Well, again, and that's the final piece I'll leave with is one of the things I wish they did with that Macrinus character is I wanted to know a little bit more, because he is capable physically, obviously psychologically and mentally he's capable, but physically, like, that's a truly dominating, like, villain character to have. I wish we would have played into like his slave time with Marcus Aurelius a little bit more, because that's, again, his motivation. I wanted that driving piece to be I'm justifying my enslavement. I justified all these things because the gods needed to put me through this to make sure I'm ready for this moment.
And I wish they would have tugged on that string a little bit earlier instead of saving it as like this third act aha.
It was never an aha. We know, like we knew
when he was like, "Do you recognize your father's mark?" And I'm like, "All right."
Right, like, yeah, like, obviously this is personal for you.
But you're also a bad person.
Right.
Like, you should, like, I wish they would have, like, started the relationship of him and Mescal being like, I used to be Marcus Aurelius' slave, and now I'm trying to, like, make a better Rome.
And then, like, if on his part, like, and then his daughter, my mother, like, sent me away, like, he is a bad person. And then Acacius' character's just like, no, you're wrong. Like, He is and then they swap. They swap the villain roles immediately.
Yeah, because that kind of, if that reveal would have happened in the beginning of the movie, it would have kind of gotten you on Macronus' side a little bit. He's kind of like this he's a self-made man, essentially. Instead of saving it for the third act where he's like, aha, I'm a slave. And you're like, yeah, but we already know you're a bad guy.
Right.
So your backstory doesn't really land for me. Because you've already done these awful things.
Yeah, and imagine if that was a different actor in that role.
Right. Yeah. So Macronus leaves the city with his army. They're going to meet Acacius' army on the field of battle. And then in classic Roman fashion, it's no, we're just going to fight.
Yeah.
And the armies are just going to watch. And then whoever wins, and the armies are just going to be like, all right.
We surrender. Because one guy fell. We surrender.
Denzel got his arm chopped off.
Yep.
And that was it. Yep. And then they're like, what do we do now, Lucius? And he's like, same thing we do every day, Binky boy.
Right.
Try to rebuild Rome.
Yep. And that's the Gladiator of 2.
So what happens? What happens to Rome now?
Well, I guess they start to I guess Lucius becomes king.
But or does he absolute that and just gives it back to the Senate? I guess?
No, he does a Black Panther 2 situation where it's let somebody
a democracy thing.
No, I don't. So maybe that's what 3 is going to be about. 3 is going to be a little bit more political, and it's the Senate still is bad. There's still bad people in the Senate.
The monkey's still there.
The monkeys are still there.
The monkey's still running the Senate.
Yeah, the monkey is running the Senate. The monkey, funny enough, leads them to the most prosperous Rome they've ever seen. Rome's just a tight-oiled ship.
It's a utopia.
It's a utopia.
Because Dondas let things.
All hail King Dondas. What a
fun character.
Yeah, what a fun character. Okay, yeah, like I said, I thoroughly enjoyed this movie.
Me too.
I can't help it. I'm a sucker for the first one. I'm a sucker for these legacy sequels. I understand that there's issues and problems and things, but this is one of those, if I were to give an official rating, I could probably go into, the low 7s. 7 point something.
It's good. It's a good, fun time.
Mm-hmm. It's still an action movie. It still has its bits. It still has its, triumphant moments. It's still got all the things.
Pour one out for Lucius's wife.
Yeah.
We never got to know her.
Yeah. All right.
She dies in the first.
She was plot motivation.
She was fridged.
Yeah.
she was fridged.
Rip.
They're like, I love you, Lucius.
Yeah.
He's like, I love you.
I was like, don't say it. You're going to die immediately.
I love you too, wife. And then she gets impaled by an arrow and she falls in the water. I do like the parallel of Maximus's dream where he's walking through the wheat field, and Maximus's dream is I want to die.
Or Lucius's dream.
Lucius's dream, yeah.
It's he wants to be with his wife.
Yeah, he wants to cross the river. The river Styx.
And... Oh, also funny enough, thank you for not killing him too at the end, because that would have been way too easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for not killing Lucius. So many other of these legacy sequels would have just killed him.
Imagine he just falls down like Maximus.
Oh, he just dies. No wounds or anything. It's just like the Padme thing. For reasons we do not know, he's dying.
Don't bring me back to that. It's an all-time hilarious. What happened there?
I don't know, man. And that's the Gladiator 2.
We're losing her.
We're losing him. We're losing him to the dream sequence.
I do like that bit, though, at the end where he says, "Speak to me, Father."
Yeah. Talk to me, Goose. Talk to me, Dad.
Talk to me, Maximus. My name is Maximus Decimus.
No, don't do the whole monologue. Don't do Dad.
No, we don't have time for a whole monologue.
Dad, we don't need the whole monologue. I gotta give my own speech.
I like the animated bit in the beginning.
Yeah, that was cool. That was cool as heck. I did like that. That was pretty dang cool.
The little animated Gladiator recap.
That definitely was cool. I
really like that. And then they ended the movie on Maximus walking through the wheat field again.
Still hit. I'm sorry. Still hits. Never.
He's still walking through that wheat field.
And that's the aura of Russell Crowe you decided to not put in this movie? You idiots. God. The coolest guy ever.
He's the coolest guy ever.
He's the second coolest guy ever, because Denzel is the coolest guy ever.
I did like the RPG-ness of the ending, where like the, you know how it'd be like an Assassin's Creed game, like the master set of armor is hidden behind all the unlockables. Right. And he finally got it. He got Maximus's armor at the end. He got all the skill upgrades. He got maxed out armor, maxed out sword. Right. He's like, I'm him now.
Right.
You're like, wait a minute. I really like this movie though.
I don't know what it is, man. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the performances. It's cool. It's a good action movie. Ends the year.
I like that they reused the "In This Life" for the next line when he was talking to Macronus. When he says, "I will never be an instrument in this life or the next." Direct callback to the "I will have my vengeance in this life or the next."
It's the best cinema.
It's good stuff. Gladiator. I like that they put the two eyes in the middle of the movie. Gladiator.
Fan Force stick. You've met your match.
But yeah, I thought this. I'm trying to think if there's anything else we didn't. David Jacobi came back.
Yeah,
they killed Derek Jacobi.
And then they killed him. They murdered him. They murdered him in cold. He was a boy. He was a child.
They killed 86-year-old Derek Jacobi.
He was still a kid. How dare you?
That was wild.
That was crazy.
Cut his throat. That was insane.
That's it, man. I think
that's it. This cast is not that big.
No, it's nothing. It's nothing insane. But
I like the new Doctor character.
Yeah, he was cool. He was cool.
I liked the tribal chieftain.
Yeah. R.I.P. to him too, man.
That was like, he just, again, another guy that was just like, let the baboons kill me.
I've done my part. I'm not the main character of this movie. I need to die.
I'm the motivation character from the first act.
Is he just Thor? He everybody he loves gets killed.
Doesn't he say that? Didn't he literally say that in the movie where he's like, everyone dies? Everyone dies. I've become well versed in losing the things I love.
Dang.
True.
My bad. All right, man. That's it.
That's Gladiator.
That's Gladiator, man.
It was fun. I really enjoyed it.
Same. Read me some socials, man. Where can the people find us?
You can find us on Twitter at Project INF_pod. You can follow us on Facebook. You can follow us on TikTok. Project Infinite Pod on TikTok. Project Infinite Podcast on YouTube. You can follow us on Instagram
at the Project Infinite Pod.
And next week, like I said, Superman and Lois. We're gonna do series finale kind of recap, just overall thoughts on what this show has done, because I think it's really outstanding. What the show was able to do with the Superman character. Loads of time will be dedicated to Elizabeth Tulloch and Tyler Hoechlin as the Superman and Lois of truly like the 2020s.
Yeah,
you know,
the first half of the late 2010s and the early 2020s. They were the late 2010s and the early 2020s. That was Superman. So, and he did a great job. So, can't wait to see him. Can't wait to talk about it. Can't wait to finish the show. Yeah.
And then, like I said, probably the week after we'll do like an Arrowverse, CW-verse kind of.
Yep. And we'll have a Superman trailer by that time as well, too. So.
Yeah. Yep. All right. That's it. That's Gladiator.
Real careful this week, man.
I wasn't going to say Macronus. The General Acacius of the podcast.
Yes, that might be my favorite one so far. That's pretty good. Anytime I get a Pedro Pascal one, that's good.
God, he's good.
Yeah, he's just, it's insane.
He's so good. I can't wait for that. Just made me excited for Fantastic Four. Like seeing him, seeing Joseph Quinn.
I'm sorry.
Like, there's some actors in this.
He's gonna kill it as Reed. I just have a feeling.
Yes, he is.
He's just got the thing.
I like how it's like people were like Pedro Pascal, yay, and then like he got cast and they're like, but then like people are starting to remember like, no, he can act actually.
So the leak trailer and he's just like, family dinners every Sunday. This is what keeps family. And I said, wait, is that Reed? You're Reed Richards from the 1960s comic books?
Hopefully he doesn't hit his wife.
Come on, man, get us out of here. We gotta go, man.
I'm just saying. Until then, we'll see you next week. Goodbye.
Peace.